Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/stories about Kevin for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the posts, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Wait. Before we start, does this interest you? This distinguished gentleman is now live on Makeshift.com for a grand total of $30. Link in the description below. Make sure you snag one before the time expires because it's not coming back. By the possums, 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 by the possums. Now to your regularly scheduled program. Old Class 1259. Kevin screams at rice. The Kevin of this tale, to be fair, had capability and intelligence, but not always the sense for where to apply it. He was, in a word, credulous. He would hyperfixate on something for a year or so and then get bored. It could be kinda cool when it was programming electronics to make stuff with LEDs or got really into cooking. But other times, he'd dive headfirst into crackpot world. He spent far too much time and money getting mixed up in some nonsense perpetual energy scam, convincing himself infinite energy machines were real. But there was a conspiracy to suppress it from the fossil fuel industry. There were a few other conspiracy theories he believed, but I don't know how impactful they were on him, other than how he could have used his time on literally anything else, but trying to charge batteries from a device he'd built with spinning magnets definitely cost real shiny monies. But my favorite must be this one. We both worked in a toxic environment with a narcissist boss. One of his ideas to try to help the situation was the rice experiment, which you can Google, or Masaru Emoto, for explanations better than I can write, but I'll describe it here as Kevin did to me and the boss. Kevin, this scientist found that positive and negative vibes can actually affect the world around us. I want us all to try this experiment. You take these 3 jars of rice for a month. You say nice things to one of them, like, I love you. One you scream at and tell it, I hate you. And the third is a control that you don't say anything to. By the end of the month, the rice in the jar you treat negatively will turn black and rotten. And the one you treat positively will, I don't remember. It was years ago and I didn't care then either. Boss, what, does that really work? Kevin, yeah, it totally proves positive and negative emotions have real world effects. Seriously, try it. Dude, you too. Will you try it? Of course not. What do you mean? This is so obviously pseudoscience. Why on earth would I waste my time on it? Whoa! You can't just say this is pseudoscience without trying it. This has come from a proper scientist. What scientist? Some Japanese guy on the internet. Some dude on the internet. He's a scientist. Anyway, please, dude, do this with me. I want you to see it for yourself. There is no path that leads to me screaming at rice for a month. Dude, we have a real problem here. I want us all to really see how the way we treat each other can have unseen consequences. Not untrue. I finally got treatment for PTSD partially related to my time at this job, but I digress. I can't believe you're not willing to try this to improve the atmosphere here at work. And I can't believe how little respect you have for me to ask this. Kevin gives up on me and tries the boss again, who is deeply suspicious but asking a lot of questions and actually entertaining the idea. I overhear them discussing it a few times but refuse to engage. I don't know how it panned out. Edit. This was a while back, but at least 15 years after the release of Ghostbusters 2, for those who know. What a weird way to mark time. Hold on, I gotta recenter my train of thought here because that was totally just a weird monkey wrench to have thrown in there. That's how you mark your time? Is from how many years ago Ghostbusters 2 was? Okay. But back to my original train of thought, which I had to re-scour and find the tracks for. That Japanese rice experiment can easily be explained by when you mutter nice things like, I love you. You're not expelling that much breath. But when you're screaming at something, you are exhaling a lot of breath which probably contains a lot of bacteria, or mold spores, or things from food. These things, when landing on rice and then sealed in a mason jar, will probably cause it to turn black and moldy and rotten. It's a really good example of correlation does not equal causation, for anyone wondering about that experiment. Basically, yes, the results did appear to be that way, but the more obvious solution is the fact that the more you breathe on something, the higher of a chance it has of growing mold. Part 2. Kevin, who screams at Rice's boss, who showed some but not complete disbelief in the tangible effects of screaming at Rice. I recently posted here, Kevin screams at Rice, where I mentioned our boss. Here is a non-exhaustive list of actions taken by boss. Ran out of compressed air, mistakenly assumed a fire extinguisher with CO2, and tried to clean out a customer's equipment with a powder extinguisher. At least he cleaned up the mess himself. A customer brought in faulty equipment for repair. He had the exact same model, so tried one of the components in his equipment, which broke his too. Knowing I also had the exact same piece of equipment, asked me if we could try it in mine as well, and lost his shit when I said no. Are you calling me stupid? No, but you must think I am to try it a third time. Complained about a family member, then invited said family member to move in with him. They were not homeless or in any sort of distress. Complaints went from often to daily. Dared me and insisted I hit him with a child's short foam-covered plastic baseball bat on the promise of no retaliation of any form, because he is very secure in his masculinity and would never need to prove himself with adolescent displays of strength and resilience. Someone had taught me the very basics of kendo the previous weekend, which I applied. He complained I nearly broke his arm. Similarly, told a woman she could knee him in the balls because she was just a girl, and couldn't possibly harm him. He spent half an hour dry heaving over the toilet, trying not to vomit from the pain. Spent over 100 pounds on an eBay listing of a dozen samurai swords. Told me to fuck off when I suggested buying one nice one for the same money. Moaned all week when they turned up and were obviously made of cheap monkey metal and balsa wood. Used unsupported means with known risks to increase the performance of the main business server, which then kept turning itself off, and he spent weeks trying to fix it. Anytime training, qualifications, or certifications came up, he would mock us and dismiss them all as fancy book learning, which he didn't need. Everyone, except Kevin, who screams at Rice, realized this was a dead-end job for their careers and left. The brain drain was a significant part of him declaring bankruptcy and closing the business. It, sounds like your boss is more of a Kevin than the Kevin who screams at Rice. Pac-Man Funky. Kevin, the crazy tenant with a constantly breaking kettle. I've just recalled a tenant who was absolutely bizarre. Almost borders on mental illness, but he was very pleasant to talk to. Would travel on his own frequently across the world so he could plan to a degree, but my goodness, did Kevin have a screw loose and have weird habits. 1. So, to address the elephant in the room, the broken kettle. I worked on the reception of a social housing group. Kevin would walk in as jolly and merry as ever and blonk a kettle on the reception. Would you like to buy a kettle? No thank you, Mr. Kevin. I've already got one, but thank you. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just broken. Well, I definitely don't want it now, Mr. Kevin. He would repeat the sales pitch to anyone nearby, a tenant, a housing officer, a child. All would get that dialogue, and unsurprisingly, no one would buy a broken kettle. This happened every few months, and his housing officer explained why. He was boiling eggs in the kettle. Sometimes they'd be fine. Oftentimes they'd explode. Turns out kettles don't like that and break after a while. And the housing officer told me a few things like the shrine he has. More on that later. 2. He would holiday frequently. He seemed like a very well-connected guy with friends all over the place. You could always tell when he was going or returned because he would wear his holidays clothes. It consisted of a bright Hawaiian shirt, brown shorts, and black shoes. This was set in stone. These are the only time you wear the holiday clothes, Mr. Kevin would say with a smile. Useful if you were going somewhere warm, but not so useful in Finland or Iceland. He nearly had to go to the hospital in, oh Jesus fucking Christ, what is that word? Reykjavik. That's how it's now pronounced. I don't care what it actually is, but it's now pronounced Reykjavik. He nearly had to go to the hospital in Reykjavik, which baffled him as he did compromise on his attire. He wore an extra pair of socks. 3. I noticed Mr. Kevin would have a yearly repair of mildew and mold on the front window. Like clockwork, in the autumn every single year. Not exactly unheard of, but curiosity got the better of me and I wanted to see if there was something we could do to prevent this. Turns out, we couldn't, and Kevin's housing officer shed some light. When it was summer and the heat became too much for Kevin, he knew how to act. The windows. You might think opening the windows is a good idea, not Mr. Kevin. He kept them shut. I don't like the noise outside. So to cool down, he would get a bucket, fill it with water, and throw it against the window. Inside the house. Few weeks later, you have mold everywhere. Repeat warnings to maybe do it on the outside of the house fell on deaf ears. He swore blind it worked a treat. Mr. Kevin never actually swore, he's a very polite man. 4. The weirdest and creepiest was the shrine he had. In his back room, for anyone to see, was a little alcove with 3 candles. 2 real, 1 electric, that was always on. On that little alcove, from the small table up to the edge of the roof, was hundreds and hundreds of celebrities. Female celebrities. Young, 18 to 40. Pretty female celebrities. Young, pretty, dead female celebrities. So, Mr. Kevin had this shrine. If he was reading a newspaper or magazine that mentioned a recently deceased celebrity and it had a picture of said person, he would cut it out and add it to the shrine. Mr. Kevin says it was a tribute to honor them. I'm not sure I want the true answer to that question if there is one. Aside from that, he was a very nice guy. Hell, I wouldn't mind having a pint with him if I could hear more stories. Alas, maybe I better not and just leave it at that. The phrase, "there's nothing wrong with it, it's just broken," is going to definitely become one of my common sayings. In a fun plot twist though, what if Kevin was actually talking about the Kettle's socioeconomic status? There's nothing wrong with it, it's just broke. S_Z. The friendly office Kevina. At a previous job I worked closely with the CEO on big initiatives, which meant working closely with her executive assistant, Kevina. Kevina was a really nice, funny person and a good listener. She had an interesting life filled with music festivals and travel with her cool boyfriend. Something was just missing. Kevina didn't understand how web browsers work, specifically the back button. To find a page on our site, she would first type in the URL and click through the menus to the page she wanted. If she got off track, she would click the logo in the top left to return to the home page and start over. The first time I witnessed this, I had to call over another coworker to confirm what I was seeing. I asked Kevina to navigate to a specific press release on our news page and then said, "Oh, wait, it was on the previous page." Kevina let out a sigh and went back to the home page to start over. I told her she could click that left arrow in the top corner, and she said she had her own way of doing things. She also seemed to have trouble with the desktop metaphor of her computer screen. She thought windows that went behind other windows were gone forever. She never moved windows around or resized them from the default, which resulted in her squinting at the screen or scrolling left, right to read emails. Of course, every important file was saved to her desktop. Just piles of files. Daily, she would ask people to email her a file because she couldn't find it. When she got frustrated on the computer, she would start clicking randomly until something happened, which resulted in many extra windows open on her desktop and more lost files. When working on a shared Google Doc, she would delete large chunks of text to free up space for her work. After the first few times, I started sending her Kevina-only versions that she could hack up to her heart's content. She used email like chat, even though we had Slack. She would CC 10 people at noon to say, "What are we doing for lunch?" And then a reply all 1 minute later, "Anybody?" She also called me from her desk phone even though we sat across from each other. I don't know if that's Kevina behavior, but it was funny. She absolutely could not get through her head that we had separate printers for different kinds of jobs. At least weekly, she would print an 8.5 by 11 document to the large format printer, and every time, she would show it around like, "How funny is this?" What's really baffling is that printing to large format requires extra steps. We tried to get IT to intervene with her permissions, but Our IT guy was about half Kevin himself. She routinely hung up on callers, including board members and other VIPs, while trying to transfer them to the CEO's office. That's... Her job is an assistant. I don't know why that's cracking me up specifically, but I think it's just the innocence of it that just gets me. This, despite multiple phone trainings and written post-it notes about which buttons to press, she also let junk calls go through to the CEO, but the CEO put a hard stop to that after the second time. She kept so much random paperwork in her purse and on her desk, just drowning in paper. Printed confirmations for upcoming flights, months away, printed emails for concert tickets, product return slips from last year. She wasn't old and stuck in a paper mindset. She was fully 15 years younger than me and spent hours a day on Instagram. She just didn't understand about storing things digitally for later. Another coworker hung out with her socially and said it was the same in her personal life, clicking the panic button on her keys and not knowing how to turn it off. She always drove in the direction her face was pointed, which was a problem when talking to passengers or checking the side mirrors. Coworker had to stop spending so much time with Kevina because it was too stressful. We really liked her, but she was the missing stair in our department. When she got fired for incompetence, she tried to get us to sign a letter about how it was an unfair firing. Her replacement was the most competent administrative assistant and maybe person I've ever worked with, which felt like coming up for air after being held underwater. Okay, so, in my eyes, it's okay to be technologically illiterate. I mean, hell, well, I'm pretty tech-savvy now. Who knows how I'll be in 20 to 30 years, and my kids are probably going to be really frustrated that I don't understand what any of the icons mean anymore. It's bound to happen that I'll lose efficacy with technology. That's just kind of inevitable. But what breaks apart someone who's technologically incompetent versus someone who's technologically ignorant is being unwilling to learn or attempt to learn new ways of approaching technology. As an example, the back button. No, I have my own way of doing things. Okay, well, your way fucking sucks. Click the fucking back button. It's the ignorance and stubbornness that make it more frustrating. Also, on a side note, hearing that someone is, turning or driving in the direction they're looking is honestly one of the scariest things I've read, because the idea of someone checking their mirrors and immediately swerving in that direction, great. New fear unlocked while driving that the person that I'm driving next to is going to suddenly swerve into me because they checked their mirror. Ace Owl Headwing. Kevin wants to get rich without an actual idea and other stories. This happened about 4 years ago, I think. I, then 19, was a year out of high school without knowing what to do next, and here in Germany, there are programs teens who graduated can enter to be prepared for work life, and where they can get help applying for apprenticeships or jobs or university. Frankly, it's not made for those who have the qualifications to attend uni, but that's a different story. So I had entered this program, and there were a few people who could qualify for the title of Kevin/Kevina. But here are some stories. Kevin 1 entered the program late, and from day one, it was something. He insisted on wanting to build his own company, and when the educators asked him what he wanted to sell, he said, I don't know, something that will get me rich. When probed to write at least a few applications for internships, he refused because he was sure he wouldn't need it and would definitely get rich with his non-existent business plan. He also vaped indoors and thought he was clever hiding it. Then one time I talked to him for a little longer. I genuinely have never talked to someone before or since then where I looked them in the eyes and saw the light was on but no one was home. It was genuinely baffling and amazing at the same time. Kevin, too, thought he could insult me by telling me I dressed like his grandma. I was wearing a Victorian-inspired outfit that day. When that didn't work, he tried to explain to me that he had meant it as a compliment and that he would never insult his own grandmother. He also wanted to be a kindergarten teacher despite having already accumulated a criminal record at age 16, with about 6 minor defenses, I think. I had to explain to him that an email sent on a computer was not separate from the one he got on his phone, though admittedly that probably is just a problem of the younger generation. I hope these qualify as Kevin's and that you had some enjoyment reading these very short stories. The whole get-rich-quick Kevin reminds me of an interaction that I had in uni a few years back. In one of my English classes, I remember there were two finance bros / business majors who were talking about how they had this brilliant idea to get a lot of money really fast, and how they were excited to be driving Lamborghinis next semester onto campus. Keep in mind, by the way, this was in the final semester that I attended college in 2019, so this would have been deep into the throes of my original Oz Media channel. These two brilliant finance bros / business majors had the groundbreaking idea that they were going to start a YouTube channel, and that's how they were going to make the money that they wanted. When I asked them what kind of content they were going to make, they were like, well, we'll figure it out when we get there. And they were busy, going into the Lamborghini configurators, and they were talking about how they're going to love to spend all the money they're going to make and all that kind of stuff. And I just remember sitting there in absolute shock of, I'm making content on YouTube. You don't even know what you're going to start with, and you just expect that it's going to work out for you, and you think that you've stumbled upon this brilliant idea that's making a YouTube channel? I tried my hardest to give them an earnest good luck, and that was all I really heard from them. And considering that I left uni in 2020 to move to Colorado, I have no idea if their YouTube dream worked out or not. I hope it did. Genuinely. It's really cool when people actually do manage to set up something like that and get it to work out for themselves. But just in the moment, I found it goofy of, yeah, we're going to make so much money without knowing what kind of content they're going to make. The most pivotal part of making money on YouTube? Reddit lurker 100,000. Pickleball-Kevin spreads the word of Pickleball-gate. In high school, I had to play a school sport and chose pickleball. In the school rules, we had to be paired up, and the pairing was randomized. I ended up with Kevin. Yes, it's his actual name. And Kevin was an aspiring professional pickleballer. Kevin had no patience for a noob like me and actively chose not to teach me because he could be my own teammate. End quote. The school disagreed and told him to stick with me. He fought the school on that policy and lost hard. Kevin decided he could just have me exist in the corner and play the teams by himself. It worked okay until I had to serve, and he didn't show me how to serve. So we always lost a point when I served. We lost every single game. Kevin, after bringing this on himself, declared there was a conspiracy against him and proclaimed he, not us, he was very specific about that, had actually won every game. But it being rigged cost him, and only him, the victory. I tried to keep it together as Kevin said this with a lot of flair for added spadazz. Real quote, by the way. And got himself banned from playing pickleball again in school tournaments. They later reformed the tournament, so we had a teacher show us how to play instead of relying on partners for learning the sport. Kevin referred to his banning as Pickleball-gate and spoke out about the rigged tournaments for the remaining time at school. No idea what happened to him, but he was passionate about pickleball, and I hoped it worked out for him. Ah yes, gotta love imposing arbitrary requirements like requiring students to participate in a school sport, and then not teaching the students how to play the sport and instead relying on the other students to teach each other. See, my middle school had something similar, but it was more based around advisories where you would choose a specific curriculum or activity to participate in the mornings, whether it was current events, chess, art, poetry, history, stuff like that. I mentioned chess because I was in chess advisory, except I never actually took it seriously or played chess. And instead, me and my friend, who was actually Kevin, but, not actually Kevin, we used to make up our own versions of chess, including the God forbid best version, Mecha Chess. And I had brought in a bunch of blue tack because I was doing stop-motion animations with Mega Bloks Halo Wars figures and Bionicles, and I needed those for their joints to stay still so I could properly actually adjust them and whatnot. So I brought that in, and Mecha Chess was played where after you captured 5 pieces, you would assemble them into a mecha using the blue tack to create the arms and legs with the king on top, and that would then determine the power of the mecha. We had like a whole chart and everything to determine its power level, and once the mecha was on the field, it was pretty much just a slaughter and it would get more joints and more. It was not how chess was meant to be played, but it was a lot of fun. And the teacher never noticed or cared the fact that we were doing this with his chess pieces, but god damn was it a lot of fun. Because not only did you have to worry about the point value of the piece, but now you had to worry about the fact of once that was captured, oh, you know that knight is going to be put into the legs of the mecha so it can move around like a fucking gymnast. Which then, of course, obviously, after the mechas were introduced, we introduced the concept of shield chess, where the pawns would form an impenetrable shield and they weren't actually moving pieces, which then, obviously, you had to put specific pieces on the chessboard to deactivate the pawn shield, which then allowed you to capture the king early before he was finished building the mecha. Can you tell we had no interest in playing actual chess and just wanted to have fun? Chaotic Creation 106. My best friend might be a Kevin. I'm pretty sure my best friend is a Kevin. He's genuinely a good guy, but I'm afraid that one day he's going to unintentionally burn the city down because of his shocking lack of common sense and basic life skills. Kevin is in his early 20s. He has mild autism, and because of that, his mother has been overprotective of him for his whole life. That's why he's never had to learn how to think on his own and take care of himself. That's a key factor to remember. This person is a Kevin not because they have autism, but because their mother was overprotective and oversheltering, because they assume that someone with autism is incapable of actually functioning on their own. Which, speaking from experience, is not true. Here are some of the crazy things Kevin has done in the past few months. A while ago, Kevin's parents had to travel for a few days and left Kevin alone at home for the first time. Kevin tried to make lunch. He put some pasta and a little salt into a pot, turned on the stove, and then left the room. A few minutes later, the smoke alarm went off. Kevin had forgotten to put water into the pot. He then tried to switch the alarm off using a broomstick, but accidentally made it drop from the ceiling and break. After that, Kevin decided that microwaving his food might be easier, but there was one problem. Kevin had never actually used a microwave before. So he took some potatoes, wrapped them in aluminum foil, then wrapped paper towels around, put them in the microwave, and set the timer to 30 minutes. That's when I arrived at his house to check on him. When the microwave started sparking, Kevin just stared at it and asked, "Does this mean it's done?" Me: "Kevin, did you microwave aluminum foil?" Kevin: "It's fine. I wrapped the foil in paper towels first." Why? To keep it from catching fire. Duh. Kevin and I both survived, but the microwave did not. Later that week, Kevin tried to wash his own clothes. It started when he woke up and realized he had no clean socks. None. Not even the emergency pair with the giant holes. So, Kevin, determined to be a responsible adult, decided to do his own laundry for the very first time. Seems simple enough, but this is Kevin. So he shoved his clothes into the washer. Then came the detergent. Now, normal people use about a capful. Kevin used half the bottle, and he turned the machine on and walked away. A few minutes later, there was a bubbling noise. Kevin returned to find the washer bubbling over. There was a soap tsunami crashing into the hallway. I arrived shortly after to find Kevin mopping the floor with a Swiffer. The next day, Kevin wore his once white shirt that now had turned to a nice shade of pink, although he was a little scared that wearing a pink shirt might turn him gay. I later found out that he had left his phone inside his trouser pocket, and that he had put these trousers into the washing machine with the phone still inside. It broke. Kevin lost his bike. According to his mother, this happens to him regularly. He was riding his bike to his pipe organ class when one of his pedals broke off. So he locked his bike in front of the church and later took the bus home. Upon arriving, his mom asked him where he had left his bike. At this point, Kevin had already forgotten about the broken pedal and claimed he had lost his bike. He ended up remembering it a week later when his pipe organ teacher asked him about the loose bike pedal he had found inside the church. Kevin got a new phone, and by then he had learned that getting a phone wet might break it. So he came up with a brilliant plan. He would waterproof it. He took a bottle of glue and began carefully squirting glue into every port on his phone. USB port, speaker holes, and the SIM card slot for good measure. After the glue had dried, Kevin took his phone into the shower to test it. It broke. Kevin lost his bike again. He rode it to the supermarket. Upon arriving, he noticed that he had forgotten to bring a bike lock. So he locked his bike to a rack using the sturdiest spaghetti noodle of all time. Just kidding. He used a shoelace. After returning from the store, he found his bike missing and the shoelace laying next to the bike rack. To this day, he insists that his bike got stolen because he didn't tie his shoelace properly. Last week, Kevin called an ambulance because I was on my period. I hadn't realized that there was a small blood stain on my pants, but Kevin saw it and totally freaked out. He then called an ambulance without even talking to me because he thought I was bleeding internally and that I was about to die. I had to explain to the very confused paramedics how my 23-year-old friend didn't know about periods. It was an awkward conversation. Kevin's dad is a doctor, by the way. You might ask yourself why I'm friends with Kevin, but despite his Kevinisms, I really like him. He's always friendly, honest, optimistic, and kind. If you can see past his ignorance and deal with the inevitable disasters, he's actually the greatest friend anyone could ask for. I'm sure there will be plenty more of these stories in the future when Kevin's common sense takes another vacation. See, this is someone who was over-sheltered by their mother and not let to actually live. Minus the shoelace incident, that might just genuinely be some pure Kevin behavior. But Buddy plays a pipe organ. He's talented, knows what he's doing, but when it comes to things that he's been sheltered on by his mother, yeah, the shit begins to fall apart. This is something where Kevin's parents failed him miserably. And Kevin probably needs to go to a life skills class, but the thing is through OP's explanation, Kevin still at least has a logic to his madness. It's not that Kevin's dumb, Kevin was just failed incomprehensibly by his parents. Don't forget, today we're launching the 3 opossums in a trench coat plush. Coming live at yeah. But you should definitely buy this plush. It is totally not 3 opossums in a trench coat. Totally not. You should definitely allow this completely non-conspicuous, oddly shaped, distinguished gentleman into your home, who will certainly not lay claim to your pantry. This is in fact 3 opossums in a trench coat who will in fact lay complete desolation to your fridge, pantry, and potentially garbage. On sale now!